they do that.
It's not all about Hollywood.
It's wonderful for that. Well, this show is all about Hollywood. This is the Showbiz Showdown, so this is all about Hollywood.
But for Harry and Meghan, it's not all about Hollywood. You're kind of asking people immediately to pick a side. And remember, the other side is the British royal family. It's not the rest of the Spice Girls or some of the England team.
Hello and welcome to the Showbiz Showdown. I'm JJ Anisiobi, and this is still the only show on all of TalkTV where we take on the biggest issues from the world of entertainment. Now, whilst some of my colleagues speak every second, every minute of every hour about this couple, I'm going to do it today for perhaps the first time. Guess who?
You hear that? That is the sound of hearts breaking all around the world.
That's right, it is Harry and Meghan, the couple who the media seem to love to hate. So today's big question: has Hollywood made outcasts of Harry and Meghan? I don't know, I'm not sure. But joining me in the studio, host of TalkTV's The Royalty, it's Miss Afua Hagan.
Hello.
Welcome to the Lion's Den.
Thank you.
So first question, why do Hollywood hate Harry and Meghan?
I don't think Hollywood do hate Harry and Meghan. Look, I think there's just been so much written and so much extrapolated from, some big entertainment headlines that have involved Harry and Meghan.
When we talk about Hollywood, I'm talking Steven Spielberg, Rob Lowe, the Beckhams. These are the power players, right?
Okay. Rob Lowe is a power player. Okay.
Listen, he's still huge in the US.
Okay.
He's had a career that spans 4 decades now.
As have I.
So the word on the street is Hollywood A-listers are ignoring them. Paula Froelich, a very prominent journalist, she used to be Page Six, she now is on a channel called News Nation. She has said that everyone's got a movie to sell or a Broadway play they want to debut on screen in London or in London's West End. They know that William and Kate, who are the biggest celebrity gets over there, which means in the UK, won't show if they think someone is friends with Harry and Meghan. So talk to me about Steven Spielberg and the Beckhams, for example. Why are they apparently shunning?
Okay, so when it comes to the Beckhams, let's start with that story. David and Victoria have been friends with Harry and Meghan for a few years now, right? And there's reports that there's been a falling out, that there's been a frosting of relations, that both sides feel that, they've been talking about each other, stabbing each other in the back. Look, how true is this? I think the only people that really know are the 4 of them, right? But I also think when we're talking about the Beckhams, Rob Lowe, Steven Spielberg, do Harry and Meghan want to make, Star Wars 13 with Steven Spielberg? Probably not. Do they want to make another First Responder series with Rob Lowe? Probably not. Harry and Meghan, I don't even really think they would care necessarily if Steven Spielberg is like, I'm not going to make a movie with you guys because I want William and Kate to come to the premiere of our film. There is nothing that says that they want to make a movie with Steven Spielberg or want to make a series with Rob Lowe. Right, so remember they have a huge deal with £100 million with Netflix, right?
Which at the moment is the most costly thing to Netflix.
Probably.
Not probably. Factually, if they put out nothing else with Netflix, this has been Netflix's most successful show, but also their most expensive. If you throw 200 million at any show, it's going to be successful.
But remember, it's not just on one show. So they've made Harry and Meghan the documentary already, most successful documentary Netflix have ever made,
and the most expensive,
most streamed. But wait a second, because the £100 million deal is not just for Harry and Meghan.
No, it's not.
It's to include other projects.
But
so now
far,
that's
what they've made.
Exactly.
And how long has it been? 2 years.
Let me finish.
It's been 2 years.
Now they're making Meet Me by the Lake, which is going to be maybe a film, maybe a series, and there's going to be other things in the pipeline. So it's not just £100 million for one series.
Well, so far it is, though.
So far,
but
it's
not
just. But
you can't base your defence on them.
But you have to remember that Netflix also give huge deals to other major players who will make one thing and then make something else and then make something else. They can't make 4 series
at the
Netflix.
Same time. I've spoken to Netflix insiders, people who work in Netflix.
Right.
They have said categorically that the deal with Harry and Meghan wasn't done by their normal finance people. It was done by the big boss, Ted Sarandos.
Of course, yeah.
And they are not happy with the lack of content they've gotten, which is we're seeing as a general theme. We'll touch on that again later. But to say they don't want to work with Steven Spielberg, if you think Spielberg is just Mr. E.T. and sci-fi,
No.
he is the player in Hollywood. If you're in Spielberg's camp and you go to Spielberg and say, I want to make a rom-com, but I can't get a way into it, Spielberg's going to know 1,000 people who can throw at you and say, work with this person. So it's beneficial to have him.
It definitely is beneficial to have him. But what's to say that Harry and Meghan need to or want to work with Steven Spielberg? There's this kind of assumption that Harry and Meghan want to work with the biggest and the best of everything. Yes,
why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't anyone want to do that?
But why wouldn't they also be content with working out their £100 million deal, most expensive ever, with Netflix, taking their podcast and doing something else with it, putting it on another platform, maybe putting it on their own website, maybe going to another player.
Success breeds success. You can't say on one hand that Meghan and Harry, why would they be concerned about working with someone who's just a big player? They're working with the world's biggest streaming service in Netflix.
Yeah.
So they the more power they have given to them or around them, the more successful their chances are of being. Right?
So you've literally just proved my point. They're working with the world's biggest streaming service. So they don't necessarily need to work with Steven Spielberg. Don't get me wrong. I am by no means sitting here saying that nobody wants to work with Steven Spielberg. He's an amazing, iconic, innovative producer, director, a serious power play in Hollywood. I am not stupid. I know that. But do Harry and Meghan necessarily have to or want to work with him? I don't know why. When it comes to this couple,
I think they need. I think
we kind of when it comes to Harry and Meghan, if they are not working with the best of the best, the Steven Spielbergs, the best person that makes shoes, the best person that makes champagne, it's like it's a failure. And I really don't understand why we've put such unrealistic expectations.
If you go into any industry at all, and you do something with a big player, if they had made the Harry and Meghan documentary, out of Archwell, and hadn't been with Netflix, and just been with Archwell, and it just been put on ITV or something like that instead, right? Then we could have measured the level of success. We could properly measure how many people are watching it. With Netflix, you can't. You might watch the documentary 1,000 times, and Netflix will still count those 1,000 things as 1,000 views. Don't say to one person. I'll say that. It's been watched 1,000 times already by one person. If it's on ITV or BBC, we have a proper linear way of looking at the numbers and saying objectively whether something's been successful. But they have gone into TV media now. They've worked with the biggest streaming company. So this is why now people are saying, well, what's next? They've done one massive thing, which they had award-winning producers working on, and abundance of dough. So I don't think it's unreasonable for people to say, well, yeah, of course I want to be in with Spielberg and in with Hollywood, because that's Hollywood. Success breeds success. And if the next thing is a flop for Netflix, then people will be on them saying, well, yeah, it was a flop. You paid all this money and it was a flop.
I don't think that Hollywood are making them outcasts, because the whole of Hollywood is not Rob Lowe, Steven Spielberg and the Beckhams. And if people think the whole of Hollywood is those four people, then you're...
What about George Clooney?
You're hugely mistaken.
What about George Clooney?
Well, I mean, they've been friends with George and Amal Clooney for a long time.
And apparently they dropped him. Apparently they dropped Clooney because of his close relationship and admiration for our King Charles. Apparently. And I'm just going on what I've heard.
And if that's something that they've decided to do, then that's absolutely up to them. I think Harry and Meghan are actually focused on much more than just Hollywood. I mean, at the moment, Prince Harry is has just been in Japan. He's been talking at a conference about sport. He's going off to play polo in Singapore.
Oh yeah, but that's for Centre Bali, right?
The proceeds from that match, of course, like you so rightly said, go to Centre Bali, that charity to do with kids living with HIV/AIDS.
That's nothing new.
It doesn't have to be something new.
No, but you're saying they're focused on bigger or other things. I'm saying
I didn't say bigger things. I said other things.
But those same things that they're focused on, he's focused on before.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Not everything has to be new. They've got charity work that they've been doing for a long time.
Yeah,
and they're focused on pushing and continuing
that's wonderful that they do that.
It's not all about Hollywood.
It's wonderful for that. Well, this show is all about Hollywood. This is the Showbiz Showdown. So this is all about Hollywood.
But for Harry and Meghan, it's not all about Hollywood. They want to do other things, and I think that's fine.
Do you think part of the problem with Harry and Meghan in Hollywood, I mean, they're the ones who moved there. They're, just outside of it. They're in Montecito. Is part of the problem that Meghan was never an A-lister. She was never an A-lister. She was on Suits, and Suits was a moderately successful program. It wasn't, watched by trillions of people around the world, but it was a moderately successful show. She went from being a C-lister to being a royal, and then she had the Oprah interview. And by the way, with the Oprah interview, at the time I enjoyed it, but I feel like the longevity of it has ruined them, and I think it's been detrimental to them, because some of the stuff obviously they said in that was then questioned and then proven to be not true, objectively speaking. And the whole thing with the racism that they then, after at the time it was alluded that the royal family were racist. Then later on it's, oh no, we never said that. The press said that. But they could have put out a statement. I mean, that's a whole other thing. But I feel like they had this lofty start to their America life, and I feel like it's the pendulum has now swung the other direction with them in at least California.
So the question you asked is, do I think the problem is that Meghan wasn't an A-list star?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that that's the issue. I think the issue is that actually Harry and Meghan came with a lot of baggage.
In Harry's book, Spare, and he writes about getting magic mushrooms out of Courtney Cox's fridge and taking them, and the bin was talking to him. Courtney Cox then a couple months later said, I didn't hand out magic mushrooms, that's not true. Again, this is the kind of thing I'm thinking, well, maybe there's some truth to Hollywood making them outcasts then, because why are you going to be hanging out with people whom, and you and I go on a TV show every day and defend Harry and Meghan and say, well, this we don't know if it's true, then if that's true or not, this is hearsay, blah, blah. But I was going to call her Monica. Courtney Cox herself has come out and said, I didn't hand out mushrooms. If I was a Hollywood A-lister now, I'd be thinking, I don't want to hang out with Harry and Meghan for fear that they're going to leak something that I've said.
And I can understand that. And actually the royal family feel the same, don't they, right? That they don't necessarily want to spend time, they don't want to hang out with them because they think that it might end up in the paperback version of Spare or in another book. But the thing is, I think two things here. First of all, Harry has said that this is enough of the look back project. So they're not going to do any more sort of tell-alls, they're not going to talk anymore about Megxit, what happened, and all that's done. But I also think that behind closed doors, Harry and Meghan themselves have probably learned a few lessons and have thought to themselves, actually, look, perhaps this spilling of the beans and being very open and honest doesn't really work for everyone. It might work for us, but it doesn't necessarily work for the people we have around us.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to dial down on doing that. Those conversations have probably been had in their house in Montecito.
When I think back to when Brand Beckham themselves moved to LA and they were welcomed by Tom Cruise and Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith and Katie Holmes, and they threw this massive party where they invited the biggest names, the biggest people from that industry and this industry and sports stars. Everyone came to this party to welcome the Beckhams. They had LA at their fingertips. Harry and very different. But Harry and Meghan did not have that same reception. They had the Oprah Winfrey interview. That was their big Hollywood hello.
But it was two very different circumstances. I mean, you had David and Victoria Beckham, who were, sporting and pop royalty, you know, the ultimate power couple. And it was a completely different setup because he didn't come with the baggage that Harry and Meghan came with. You're right that the first sort of foray into the here we are in Hollywood was that Oprah interview, which was again hugely divisive. Hugely divisive.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the way that you want to enter a new sphere, a new neighborhood or anything, a new industry. And so therefore, you're kind of asking people immediately to pick a side. And remember, the other side is the British royal family. It's not the rest of the Spice Girls or some of the England team. Do you know what I mean? So it's a very, very different situation.
My final question for you. My final question for you before we wrap up. Lady Hussey, right? So she obviously was involved in the whole scandal of asking a woman of colour, where are you really from?
Yeah.
Where are you from? Where are you from? And not taking London or Haringey or whatever for an answer. Harry came out, a month or so later saying, no, I love Lady Hussey. She's a wonderful woman. When I heard his statement, I instantly thought, if you really thought that, why didn't you come out and say it at the time in defence of this old woman who I still think was a racist? But also, I felt like he gaslit me. I felt him and Meghan had gaslit me and the supporters that they did have, because we were under the influence of. I mean, look, we know the history of the royal family. So for him to be like, oh, they asked what colour the babe would be, and we all heard the stories, and then suddenly it's like, no, we never said there was racism, and Lady Hussey isn't a racist. She's a lovely woman. I feel like that had a detrimental effect to me in supporting them. So I feel like in Hollywood, where everyone's got to be super, we love everyone, everyone's great, blah, blah. I think that put a cat amongst the pigeons, and people, that built up the antitrust in Harry and Meghan.
That statement there was certainly disappointing, as was we didn't say it was racism, we thought it was more unconscious bias. Everyone was kind of like, if you thought that at the time, then it would have been a really good idea for you to clarify that statement. You could have done that in the 24 hours, 48 hours after the interview went out. Would have been very helpful, but it wasn't done. But I think what we also need to not do is hold up Harry and Meghan as the bastions for, you know, racial diversity in the United Kingdom. They are not that. They are not that. So we need to not put that on them, and we need to not make them our heroes.
They need to stop receiving awards for racial equality work, whatever then.
I kind of have to agree with you on that one, because I do understand that maybe they are trying to, you know, quote unquote, change the world in their own way. But when it comes to the fight against institutional racism, Harry and Meghan are not going to be the ones to do it for us.
True story. Well, look, I can reveal I did message Brooklyn Beckham, to ask him about his parents.
Yep.
He hasn't replied.
Unbelievable.
Unsurprisingly.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Never returns my calls anymore. Now he's a married man.
Me neither.
Look, that's all we have time for. I don't know what the answer is on this. There's no way of proving it without David or Steven Spielberg or Victoria.
You can call. They can call us.
They can call. You can call us. Brooklyn,
text.
check your DMs. And
Rob
message me
Lowe,
back.
for goodness sake, called you last night.
But
what are you doing?
I'll tell you what. You leave your comments. You decide whether you think Hollywood have ousted and outcast Harry and Meghan. Leave comments below. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you again next time.